On Friday, the 12th of June, 2026, at the opening bell on the Nasdaq, a number that had never existed in human history quietly came into being. A man's net worth crossed $1 trillion. Not a company, not a country's treasury, one person. The ticker was SPCX. The company was SpaceX. And the man watching his own fortune climb past a number with 12 zeros in it was Elon Musk, a college dropout, a South African immigrant, a serial gambler with rockets and cars, and now, officially, the first trillionaire the world has ever produced. The day before, he was worth around $795 billion. By the time SpaceX shares opened for public trading and popped nearly 20% above their offer price, he had added more than $180 billion to his name in a single day. More than the entire net worth of almost every other living human being gained between breakfast and lunch. This is the story of how he got there, not the headline, the whole climb. Because the $1 trillion number is the easy part to say and the hardest part to understand. And to understand it, you have to go back, way back, to a teenager with a suitcase, 2 near bankruptcies, a rocket that had to work or everything would end, and a bet so reckless that almost everyone who knew him thought he was going to lose it all. This is the story of the first trillionaire. Before we go back, let's sit with the number, because your brain is not built to feel it. A trillion is 1,000 billion. A million seconds is about 11.5 days. A billion seconds is almost 32 years. A trillion seconds is over 31,000 years. Older than agriculture, older than written language. Put it in money. If you earned $50,000 a year, a good salary, and you never spent a cent, you would need roughly 20 million years to earn $1 trillion. If you had started a business on the day Julius Caesar was alive and somehow lost $1 million every single day, all the way to today, you still would not have lost your first trillion. Only about 21 countries on Earth produce more than $1 trillion of economic output in a year. Elon Musk, one man, is now worth more than the annual output of entire developed nations. He is worth more than the next several richest people on the planet, combined. That is the destination. Now here is where the journey started. And it did not start with rockets. It started with a boy, a stack of books, and a one-way ticket out of South Africa. Elon Musk was born on the 28th of June, 1971, in Pretoria, South Africa. By his own telling, he was a strange, bookish kid, the sort who read the entire encyclopedia because he ran out of other things to read. He was bullied badly enough to be hospitalized once, and he was certain from a young age that the future was happening somewhere else, and that somewhere else was America. At 17, he left. The way he tells it, he arrived in North America with around $2,000 and a suitcase full of books. That line is his own, repeated for years, and it has become part of the legend. What is documented is that he made his way first to Canada, then to the United States, working odd jobs, and eventually to the University of Pennsylvania, where he earned 2 degrees, one in physics, one in economics. He says he graduated with something like $100,000 in student debt. He enrolled in a PhD program at Stanford and quit after about 2 days. It was 1995. The internet was exploding. And Musk decided he would rather build the future than study it. He did not have a grand plan to become the richest person alive. He had a hunch that the most important problems of the century were the internet, sustainable energy, and space, and a willingness to throw himself at all 3 with almost no money and a tolerance for risk that bordered on self-destruction. The space part would come later. First, he had to make his first fortune. And he made it the way a lot of people did in the late 90s, on the web. His first company was called Zip2. It was 1995, and the idea was simple for today, but radical then. Put business directories and maps on the internet, so a newspaper could tell you where the nearest pizza place was. He and his brother Kimball were so broke they slept in the office and showered at the YMCA. 4 years later, in 1999, the computer giant Compaq bought Zip2 for $307 million in cash. Musk's personal share was around $22 million. He was 27 years old, and he had just gone from sleeping on an office floor to being a multimillionaire. Most people would have stopped, bought an island. Musk took almost all of it and poured it into the next thing, an online bank he called X.com. That company merged with a competitor and became something you have definitely heard of, PayPal. In 2002, eBay bought PayPal for about $1.5 billion. Musk was the largest shareholder. His cut was somewhere between $165 and $180 million. So picture it, he is 30 years old. He has, in cash, more money than almost anyone could spend in a lifetime. The safe move, the sane move, is to become an investor, to let that money make more money quietly forever. Instead, he looked up, literally. He decided he was going to build rockets, and within a few years, that decision would nearly destroy him. In 2002, Musk founded Space Exploration Technologies, SpaceX, out of a 75,000 square foot warehouse in El Segundo, California. The goal he stated out loud was so grandiose that serious people laughed. He wanted to make humanity a multi-planet species. He wanted to get to Mars. Around the same time, he became the largest investor in, and then the public face of, a tiny electric car startup called Tesla. Two impossible industries at once, cars and rockets, two of the most capital-hungry, failure-prone businesses a human being can choose. People in the aerospace world thought the rocket thing was a vanity project. People in Detroit thought the car thing was a toy. And for a while, they looked right. By 2008, it was all coming apart at once. SpaceX had attempted to launch its first rocket, the Falcon 1, 3 times. 3 times it failed. Each failure was tens of millions of dollars. Money Musk was paying out of his own pocket. The PayPal fortune draining away launch by launch. Meanwhile, Tesla was burning through roughly $4 million a month and could not deliver cars on time. The global financial crisis hit. Funding froze everywhere. Musk has said that 2008 was the worst year of his life. He was getting divorced, he was nearly out of money, and he had 2 companies, both weeks from death, and only enough cash left to maybe save one. He did not pick one. He split his last money, reportedly his final tens of millions, between both. He bet everything on both at the same time with no safety net. On the 28th of September 2008, SpaceX launched the Falcon 1 for the 4th time. It was the last attempt they could afford. If it failed, the company was finished. It reached orbit. The first privately built liquid-fueled rocket ever to do so. Weeks later, days before Christmas, NASA awarded SpaceX a contract worth $1.6 billion to fly cargo to the International Space Station. And on the 23rd of December 2008, Tesla closed an emergency round of funding that saved it from bankruptcy by a matter of days. He had been minutes from zero. Both companies lived. And from that knife's edge, the empire began to grow. What happened next is the part that turned a survivor into a titan. SpaceX did something the entire aerospace industry had assumed was impossible, or at least pointless. It made rockets that come back. On the 21st of December 2015, a Falcon 9 booster launched a payload to orbit and then flew itself back down and landed upright on a pad, standing on its own exhaust like something out of a 1950s science fiction. Reusable rockets changed the economics of space the way reusable airplanes would have changed flying if we'd thrown the plane away after every trip. SpaceX went from a scrappy underdog to the company that launches more mass into orbit than every other country and company on Earth combined. NASA later handed it a contract worth nearly $3 billion to build the lander that would return astronauts to the moon. Then came Starlink, a constellation of thousands of small satellites beaming internet to anywhere on the planet, to remote villages, to disaster zones, to Ukraine, where it has kept a nation online through war with millions of users. And here's the quiet financial truth most people miss. The rockets get the glory, but Starlink, the internet subscription, is the part of SpaceX that actually makes the money. It is the engine underneath the valuation. The boy who read about rockets was now the man who had reinvented them. By the 2020s, Elon Musk was not running a company. He was running a constellation of them. Tesla had gone from a near bankrupt startup to, at one point, the most valuable car company on Earth, dragging the entire auto industry toward electric vehicles, whether it wanted to go or not. In late 2025, Tesla shareholders approved a pay package for Musk that could be worth as much as $1 trillion over 10 years, the largest corporate pay deal in history, tied to wildly ambitious targets, including selling 1 million humanoid robots. More than 75% of shareholders voted yes. Musk celebrated by dancing on stage next to 2 of those very robots. There was Neuralink, putting computer chips into human brains. And by 2026, it had implanted devices in more than 20 patients, including people with ALS and paralysis, letting some of them control computers and even begin to speak again with their thoughts. There was X, formerly Twitter, which he bought in 2022 for $44 billion. There was XAI and its chatbot, Grok. There was the Boring Company, digging tunnels under cities. Critics looked at all of this and saw a man stretched impossibly thin, picking fights, making promises he couldn't keep. Supporters saw the only person alive willing to attack this many impossible problems at once. But both sides agreed on one thing. The value of his empire was now almost entirely tied up in one crown jewel that the public could not yet buy a piece of. That was about to change. SpaceX was going public, and it was going to rewrite the record books. An IPO, an initial public offering, is the moment a private company sells shares to the public for the first time. For most of its life, you could not buy a piece of SpaceX unless you were an insider, an employee, or a very wealthy investor. On the 11th of June, 2026, SpaceX priced its shares at $135 each. It offered roughly 555 million shares. The next morning, the 12th of June, the stock opened at $150 and climbed to close near 161, up almost 20% on its first day. The numbers were staggering. SpaceX raised about $75 billion, the largest initial public offering in the history of the world. It valued the company at around $1.77 trillion, and by the end of that first day, the market valued it north of $2 trillion. That single event is what pushed Elon Musk's net worth past $1 trillion. His SpaceX stake alone was now worth roughly $690 billion. His Tesla stake around $280 billion. He kept over 80% of the voting control. And because of a standard 1-year lockup, he cannot actually sell a single SpaceX share for a year. A trillionaire on paper, frozen in his own equity. But here is the detail that made this IPO different. SpaceX set aside up to 30% of its shares for ordinary retail investors through apps like Robinhood, when a typical IPO reserves 5 to 10%. And by analyst estimates, the listing turned more than 4,000 SpaceX employees, including blue-collar workers paid hourly who held company stock, into millionaires overnight. When the man at the top crossed $1 trillion, he did not cross it alone. So, what does it actually mean that one human being is now worth $1 trillion? Supporters make a real argument. This is not cash in a vault. It is the value of companies, rockets, factories, satellites that employ tens of thousands of people and pour money back into the economy through what economists call the multiplier effect. When SpaceX builds, it creates jobs for welders and suppliers and the towns around its facilities. The wealth, they say, is a measure of how much Musk has built, not how much he has hoarded. Critics make a real argument too. They ask whether any single person should hold more wealth than entire nations, in a world where so many have so little. Whether this is the proof that the system works, or proof that it has tilted too far. And the contrast was made vivid that very month. Just weeks before Musk's record-breaking IPO, his great rival in the space race,
Jeff Bezos, watched his New Glenn rocket erupt in a fireball on the launch pad, a setback so severe that NASA suggested the pad might not recover for years. One Titan was minting a record, the other was sweeping up wreckage. The same month, the same sky. History will argue about what it means, but the fact itself is settled. On the day it happened, Musk said something simple. He said it was hard to believe that a little company that started in a warehouse in El Segundo was now going public with the largest offering ever. That is the whole story in one sentence. A bullied kid from Pretoria, a suitcase he says was full of books. A man who sold everything he built and gambled it on rockets, who was minutes from losing all of it in 2008, who landed rockets when the experts said it couldn't be done, and who, on a Friday morning in June, became the first member of a club that had never had a single member before. Whatever you think of him, and the world is deeply, loudly divided on exactly that, the number is real. For the first time in human history, one person is worth $1 trillion. His name is Elon Musk. He is the first trillionaire. And the strangest part of the whole story might be this: he is almost certainly not going to be the last.